Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the morning edition. We have the morning report from the New York Times, the century's best movies. Let's get into it. Today is June 27, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Here's the latest news to start your Friday. A new government panel changed long-standing recommendations for flu vaccines. The Supreme Court is expected to release the remaining decisions of its term at 10 a.m. Eastern Time today. Anna Wintour, Wintour, is stepping down as editor of American Bog. More news is below, but first we share the top 100 movies of the century. Ladies and gentlemen, the best movies by Kyle Buchanan. He covers Hollywood and pop. 10 years ago, last May, he found himself so thunderstruck by a movie that he's pretty sure his mouth hung open for nearly its entire 2-hour running time. The film was George Miller's Miscreal Vision, Mad Max Fury Road, which he'd easily rank as the top greatest action movies of last quarter. Quarter century. Turns out, so does Hollywood. At 11th place, The Max Fury Road was the highest ranking blockbuster on our exciting news list, the 100 best movies of the 21st century, compiled by polling more than 500 people in and around the film industry. Contributors included Oscar-winning doctors like Pedro Almodovar, Sofia Coppola, Guillermo del Toro, and Barry Jenkins, and actors such as Tilda Swinton, Javier Bardem, Julianne Moore, and Chiwetel Ejiofor, Ejiofor. We even got a ballot from 98-year-old Mel Brooks. We have made many of those ballots available for you perusal. You can find them here. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that in the video description. I will have a link to them in the video description. I loved learning that the Century called me excuse me, I loved learning that the Call Me By Your Name director Nwq Guarino, has expectedly arty tastes, but also included the mostly forgotten John Carpenter sci-fi film Ghosts of Mars on his list. As for the top films, I had he had an early hunch that the biggest vote getters would be David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, Mulholland, and Bong Joon-ho's Best Picture winner, Parasite, though I confess he had them in the wrong order. In the end, Parasite prevailed, while Lynch's film earned second place. The best of the top 10 are number 3, There Will Be Blood. Number 4, In the Mood for Love. Number 5, Moonlight. Number 6 is No Country for Old Men. Number 7 is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Number 8 is Get Out. Number 9 is Spirited Away. Number 10 is Social Network. Lastly, now, though the advent of streaming services has affected the way movies are made and watched over the last quarter century, only one film from a streamer made the list. That movie is Netflix's Roma at number 46. I think that's a testament to just how profound the big screen experience still feels. Our greatest cinematic memories, like the time My jaw dropped while watching Fury Road are forged in the dark with a packed audience along for the ride. A few other things, ladies and gentlemen, stood out about the full list. Around the quarter of the films on the list are in a language other than English, reflecting both the global scope of our voters and the international nature of the contemporary cinema scene. 11 of the films were directed by women. Fewer Best Pictures, ladies and gentlemen, made the list than you might expect. Though there are in the top 10, 3 are in the top 10. Parasite, No Country for Old Men, and Moonlight. Only 7 of those, however, are scattered throughout the rest of the list. The likes of Crash and Green Book may have charmed Oscar voters when they debuted, but have they stood the test of time? Check out the entire list here. The Times readers can also submit your own ballots, which we will eventually compile into another list. I'm interested to see just how dramatically your choice may differ from the tastes of Hollywood insiders. Here's mine, ladies and gentlemen. Mad Max Fury, 20th Century Woman, 2015-2016, birth 2004. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2000. Call Me By Your Name, 2017. Mulan, Thrive, Mulholland, 2001. Y2 Mama, Tamayan, Tambien, 2002. Margaret, 2011. 12 Years of Slave, 2013. Lost in Translation, 2003. Finally. And finally, our Iran reporting. On Wednesday, Trump threatened to sue the Times. He demanded an apology and a restriction for our coverage of an initial U.S. intelligence assessment saying the airstrikes against Iran had set back its nuclear program by just months. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth then gave a news conference yesterday lamenting what he described as the Times' failure to report on the attack's impact. Patrick Healy, who oversees Times newsroom standards, addresses those critiques. There are two problems here. First, the government keeps contradicting itself. Trump and Hegseth say the nuclear program was obliterated, but then they and Secretary of State Marco Rubio keep making statements that undermine their mission accomplished narrative. Second, we publish stories on topics Hegseth said we had ignored. First, spy agencies are still defining the intelligence on Iran. They reported on that here. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that in the video description. Secondly, the strikes on Fordo complex destroy key infrastructures. We reported on that here. Reported on that here. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that as well in the video description. Fourthly, expert analysis said U.S. and Israeli strikes had caused enormous damage to Iran's nuclear sites. We report on that here. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that as well in the video description. Fourthly, Israel's military said its strikes had set back Iran's nuclear program by years. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to their reporting as well in the video description. Fifthly, ladies and gentlemen, assessments by the CIA director and the director of national intelligence said that these strikes had severely damaged Iran's nuclear program. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that reporting in the video description. Sixthly, ladies and gentlemen, furthermore, Hegseth also asked about yesterday how many stories have been written about how hard it is to fly a plane for 36 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to Greg Jeffrey's story in the video description. As for Trump's threats, the Times Duty General Counsel David McCraw replied to the president's lawyers on Thursday by quoting Trump's shifting statements and explaining what it is we do. Quote, no retraction is needed. No apology will be forthcoming, Kroll wrote, adding, quote, we told the truth on the best of our ability. We will continue to do so, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, more on Iran. Let's get into it. Firstly, certificates at Iran's Fordo enrichment plant are no longer operational. The head of the UN's nuclear watchdog said Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei Ali Khamenei, Ayatollah, made his first statement public comments since the U.S. attack. He played down damage to his country's nuclear program. Iran's secondly, ladies and gentlemen, foreign minister, however, said the nuclear facilities had sustained significant and serious damages. Trump wants the central bank to lower interest rates. Central bank won't budge. Why do they have such a tense relationship? Even after Gorlick explains. Here's a riddle, ladies and gentlemen. What's destructive, too late, and a real dummy? According to Trump, its Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, the president has been angry with Powell, whom he appointed in his first term. 4 years. My colleague, Colby Smith, wrote, the root of their tiff interest rates. What's an interest rate, you guys may ask? It's what a bank charges to let you borrow its money. When the Fed lowers the rate, people spend more. When it raises it, people save more. Trump's take is the Federal Reserve Chair should cut rates, which would juice spending across the economy and make it easier for the government to pay off its debt. Powell says the central bank needs to wait and see how Trump's policies, tariffs, deportations play out before deciding to cut rates. It's just a question about being prudent and careful, he said. The context. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump can't technically fire Powell, but his term expires in 11 months. And Trump has toyed with the idea of announcing an early replacement. The Wall Street Journal reported. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to their reporting in the video description. Ladies and gentlemen, for more, firstly, investors are worried that Trump may try to replace Powell with someone who would focus on appeasing the president. The Deal Book newsletter wrote, the Fed proposed a new rule that would let banks keep less money on hand, which critics warn could make a financial crisis more likely. Homebuyers will soon be allowed to list crypto assets as part of their net worth when they apply for mortgages. Ladies and gentlemen, time for the latest news. Vaccines. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s new advisors voted in rescind voted to rescind long-standing recommendations for flu vaccine. They said some vaccines contain an ingredient that anti-vaccine movement has falsely linked to autism. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on, vaccines do not cause autism. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, time to move on. A top Senate official rejected provisions in Republicans' domestic policy bill. Party leaders are scrambling to salvage the legislation. One rejected item, a provision to restrict immigrants from Medicare, featured prominently in yesterday's newsletter. The Trump administration, Trump regime, because, ladies and gentlemen, let's face it, the Trump administration is not acting like an administration. They're acting like a regime. Indicated that it planned to again deport Kilmer Amandula Brigal Garcia, who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. This time, officials want to send him to a different country. which, ladies and gentlemen, they are still in violation of the Supreme Court 9-0 ruling, because here is why. They are in violation because they were told by every federal judge that he Armando Abrigo Garcia, needed to be sent back to his home in El Salvador with his Maryland with his family, not El Salvador. But obviously they illegally, unconstitutionally, unlawfully rerouted him to Tennessee to face chumped up human smuggling charges. The regime has privately pushed for the University of Virginia's president's resignation as part of a Justice Department investigation into the school's DEI efforts. Carolyn McCarthy, a former congresswoman from Long Island who became a champion of firearms regulation after a gunman on a commuter train shattered her family, died at 81. Ladies and gentlemen, rest in peace, Caroline McCarthy. You will be missed and remembered and loved. Ladies and gentlemen, the New York mayor's race, Mayor Eric Adams, who is running for re-election as an independent, met with New York City business leaders desperate to stop Zohran Mamdani, Zohran, the likely Democratic nominee. The National Republican figures are attacking Mamdani with Islamophobic tropes, linking him to the 9/11 attacks and calling for his deportation. Ladies and gentlemen, other big stories. Gazans are risking their lives to get food at distribution centers. Officials in the enclave say hundreds of Gazans have been killed this month. People across the southern U.S. reported seeing a fireball streak throughout the sky. Scientists say it was a meteor. Droughts forced Los Angeles to rethink its water usage. In the video below, Michael Kimmelman explores how the city's adaptations could help it survive a drier future. Click to watch. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to the video in the video description below. Ladies and gentlemen, time to move on to opinions. These maps of New York from Michael Lange will help explain how Monday won the mayoral primary election. Here's a column by David Brooks on agreeing with Netanyahu. Ladies and gentlemen, the Times sale our best rates for readers of the morning. Save now with the best offer on unlimited news and analysis as part of the Complete Times experience. $1 a week for your first year. Ladies and gentlemen, time for your morning reads. Bezos Sanchez wedding. Reports are scrambling for the little information leaking out of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to what we know in the video description. AI fakes, misleading content is already tainting elections around the world. That we can blame Elon Musk for. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to that in the video description. Your pick, the most clicked story in the morning yesterday, answered the question, what is democratic scholarism? Lives lived before Bill Moyers began his long celebrated career as a broadcast journalist. He was a close advisor to President Lyndon B. Johnson. A Times bureau chief said he was the most able and influential presidential assistant he had ever seen. Moyers has died at 91. Ladies and gentlemen, rest in peace, Moyers. You will be remembered and missed deeply. Ladies and gentlemen, now for sports. 4 minutes. Faith Kipyegon, the Kenyan Olympic champion, tried to become the first woman to break the 4-minute mile, but she ran about 6 seconds too slow. ILB Wander Franco, 24, a former Tampa Bay Rays All-Star, was given a 2-year suspended sentence after being convicted of sexual abuse of a minor in the Dominican Republic. Ladies and gentlemen, arts and ideas. Anna Wintour, Wintour, shocked the media and fashion worlds when she said she would give up her role as editor of American Vogue, Vogue. It's a shift in power, but not the end of her run as the world's most famous magazine editor. Once she relinquishes the editor-in-chief title, that role will no longer exist. Instead, a head of editorial content, a newly created role at American Vogue, VOGUE, will report directly to her. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to the video description. A link to the reading in the video description if you want to read more. Ladies and gentlemen, the morning recommends building your own crunchy queso wrap with the biggest flour tortillas you can find. Learn to make salad dressing with help from Salmon Nosrat. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have a link to their news quiz if you want to take their news quiz in the video description. Here's today's spelling bee. Yesterday's program was Zircona. And here are today's mini crossword: Fordo, connections, sports, connections, and strands. Thanks for spending part of your morning with the Times. See you tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this legal breaking reporting, or this morning reporting and morning edition. If you did enjoy this morning reporting and morning edition, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Secondly, if you want to make sure you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise, when I report on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Secondly, please hit the all notifications option. The all notification option is located directly beneath the screen here on the right hand side of the subscribe button. Thirdly, if you guys also want to make sure you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please follow me on my social medias that'll be linked down below in the video description. Fourthly, please help me reach and achieve the goal of 100 190 plus subscribers. The reason why I'm saying 190 plus subscribers, ladies and gentlemen, is because right after we reach and achieve the goal of 190 subscribers, we have more subscribers to reach and achieve. Right after we reach and achieve the goal of 190 subscribers. Fifthly, ladies and gentlemen, please stay safe. Please stay positive. Even though, unfortunately, I know it's hard for the majority of you, unfortunately, during these unfortunate, illegal, induced darkness times caused by the illegal, unconstitutional Trump administration, Trump regime, not administration, just regime, to stay positive. It's even, unfortunately, hard for me at times to stay positive during these unfortunate, illegal, induced darkness times caused by the illegal Trump regime. And know that justice will prevail, eventually correctly on the correct side of the law, despite the illegal, unconstitutional Trump regime's illegal executive orders, actions, and behaviors. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, and always look for the ports of light in today's unfortunate induced darkness caused by the illegal, unconstitutional Trump regime. And until my next legal breaking reporting and morning edition and legal breaking news reporting and breaking news reporting, ladies and gentlemen, on the side of politics, please look forward to my next legal breaking reporting and video dropping. And I will talk to you guys in the next reporting.